we're continuing to track President Trump's takeover of law enforcement here in the district. Earlier this week, both Vice President J.D. Vance and Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller spoke out against protesters.
We have a bunch of old, primarily white people who are out there protesting the policies that keep people safe when they've never felt danger in their entire lives.
All these demonstrators that you've seen out here in recent days, all of these elderly white hippies, they're not part of the city and never have been. And by the way, most of the citizens who live in Washington, D.C. are black. This is not a city that has had any safety for its black citizens for generations.
So joining us now to talk about all of those comments and the federal takeover of MPD is DC Shadow Rep Oye Owolewa. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Let's get your reaction to Stephen Miller that black folks in DC haven't had safety for generations and it's just a bunch of old white hippies protesting.
Yeah, I'm so grateful you asked that question. I believe that's completely devoid of the facts. I mean, we have a 30-year low in crime, and even yesterday there was actually a huge protest/concert where you saw a lot of white faces, black people out there, so really showing that the protesters make up a different, diverse group of people, which makes up DC.
So there have been a number of protesters, and there are some people who wonder whether that helps the matter or hurts the matter, depending on who's observing it. What's your sense on that?
Well, clearly, public safety is a huge issue in D.C., but nobody wants to see the military on our streets. And one of the reasons why we don't want to see National Guards on the street, especially those that come from out of town, is because they don't have that cultural competency of our communities. There's not really that interest in engaging with their community. We see DEA agent, ATF people wearing masks, not responding to questions. But then you also see MPD talking with the community, you know, really engaging, smiling at us, really understanding that we're all one community. So we want our police force to still engage with us even as they keep our streets safe.
We have some polling that came out earlier this week from the Washington Post. They asked about, I believe, 600 residents or so how they felt about the president's takeover of MPD. 79% opposed, with 17% supporting and 4% have no opinion. That same poll did find, though, that people believe that the increased law enforcement presence will make a difference. Right. So how do you balance it? Is it this whole thing of we are glad to have the help, but it's how we are getting it that is an issue?
Absolutely. I mean, we're seeing fewer violent crime right now, which is a good thing. However, you're also seeing a lot less activity. Our restaurants are experiencing 75% less tourism and less patronage, and it's almost looking like the pandemic outside at night when nobody's on these streets. So although we want to see safer streets, we also want to see our community back. So, you know, trying to get more police officers from our communities would be important, but shipping them from South Carolina, Ohio, Mississippi is just not the right thing to do.
I want to ask you about two things. One is about U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, who wants to hit people with the maximum charge for anything that they do, if it's related to this. That's the first half. The other half is that she's appointing 20 judge advocate generals, military JAG attorneys, to prosecute civil cases. So the first one, and then please talk about the second question and what you think that could mean. Right.
When it comes to deterrence of crime, it's not necessarily the actual sentence that deters crime, it's the likelihood of being caught, right? When someone commits a crime, they're not worried about whether it's going to be 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. And what we're seeing right now is people getting out of prison want that second chance. You know, people that really want to have the record sealed and get the employment that they want to do and live a safer life so we can all be in the safer communities. I believe U.S. Attorney Pirro is not really focused on that. In fact, she even said she doesn't really care about root causes of crime, and that's part of the problem. We need to find solutions that not only keep our communities safe, but allow people to have that second chance. About bringing JAGs into the judgeship, it's really important that we have judges from our communities. One thing about not being a state is that we don't get to elect judges like our friends in Maryland, our friends in Virginia, and I believe if we were to elect our own judges or have judges from our communities, we'll be able to have sentences that reflect the values of our community versus the military.
But my question is, these are military folks. These are they have legal military minds. Is military law anything like civil law?
Not at all. And we're looking at a group of people who doesn't see us as their peers, whether it's the National Guard from other states, whether these military judges. We want folks that could see someone that looks like me and say, you know what, that could be my neighbor or my neighbor's child, and really make sure we have law that reflects our values.
So we're about halfway through this 30-day sort of takeover. What do you want to see either from the president or Congress when it comes to the question of whether to extend this or to continue to have the National Guard deployed?
Well, one thing we have to
Sorry, especially if the numbers continue to go down.
Well, we have to also focus on the cost. I mean, we're talking about removing homeless encampments, and it costs about $400,000 plus for a National Guard to be in D.C. But it takes about $150,000 to find permanent housing for the unhoused. So if we actually use those resources the right way, we can actually have long-term benefits rather than short-term drops in numbers, because once the National Guard leaves, a lot of those numbers are going to come back up. So if we don't address root causes and really have wraparound services for those who need it the most, we won't have those long-lasting benefits to support D.C.
Quickly before we go, there are a lot of people around the country who support this.
Right.
They see it, they think it's great. They think that the city is, not good.
Right.
What would you like them to know? I presume you don't agree.
I don't agree, and I want them to actually come to D.C. We have a bad light compared to what the president is saying, but if they come to D.C. and they go to Georgetown in midnight and see 10, 15 National Guard members walking down the street, then they'll see where their money is going. Now, would you rather have a lot of crime or fewer crime? Of course, everyone wants fewer crime, but there's a way to do this in a reasonable and responsible way, and this just isn't it.
All right, D.C. Shadow Rep Oye Owolewa, we appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.